Welcome into Steelers Talk by Chat Sports, presented by Prize Picks. I'm your host, Jack Sperry. At the top of today's show, I'm going to tell you why the Darnell Washington extension just got even better. Then I'll go into a Steelers insider who says that the position battles at the top of the Steelers depth chart are pretty much already decided even before we put on the pads at Steelers training camp in Latrobe. And then another report from a Steelers insider says the Steelers may be comfortable not paying Joey Porter Jr. and letting him walk in free agency next spring. I'll let you guys know my thoughts there towards the end of today's show, so make sure you guys stick around for that. But before we get into the content today, if you guys want to give me a follow on X, you can find me at Jack_Sperry. I put out my daily thoughts on Pittsburgh Steelers football out on that platform. I also do our film study during the season out on that platform because we can't put it out here on YouTube. And then also I'm going to be putting out a bunch of just general NFL quarterback content on there here coming up here for my annual quarterback rankings that I'm going to be putting out here for Chat Sports. So if you guys want to get all that extra content, you guys can find me at Jack_Sperry. Greatly appreciate your guys' support on that platform. All right, well, the good news for the Pittsburgh Steelers is I think that they got a pretty good value for Darnell Washington on his 4-year extension here, as the Jaguars have also extended their standout tight end Brenton Strange, only they're paying him, and they're going to be paying him almost $4 million per season. They have agreed on a new contract extension with Strange for 3 years, up to $48 million, which would pay him $14 million per season if he hits every step along the way there. And of course, the Pittsburgh Steelers just signed a 4-year extension with Darnell Washington worth $42 million. So even though this contract is more years, it's actually less total, and it's much less per season, as it's just $10.25 million per season to lock up one of the best blocking tight ends in the National Football League. A great X factor for the Pittsburgh Steelers offense. And, for me, guys, give me Darnell Washington's contract here over Brenton Strange's any day of the week, all right? Strange is a very good player. He's kind of in that vein of like Dalton Schultz, Jake Ferguson, where they're, pretty good blocker, pretty darn good receiver, well-balanced player, and he's a pretty big part of that Jacksonville Jaguars offense. I understand why Jacksonville made this deal, but in comparison to that deal, Omar Khan and the Pittsburgh Steelers look like they got a pretty darn good value for Darnell Washington, who is not as good of a receiver as Strange is, but he's a better blocker in my opinion. He's way heavier, first of all, so the kinds of blocks you can ask him to make, kind of vary from Brenton Strange. And then he's also one of the best yak threats off of check flats in the National Football League, and we know how important that is for a guy like Aaron Rodgers, who doesn't have a ton of mobility. Having those check down options that are reliable and are as tough to bring down after the catch as Washington is very important for the Pittsburgh Steelers. And Mike McCarthy is making it abundantly clear they want to play very tough on the offensive side of the ball. You have to play outside in cold weather conditions in this division every single year, and Washington is a big part of what this team does offensively. I mean, just remember last year when Darnell left with that forearm injury last year, this offense kind of fell off a cliff, specifically the run offense. So getting him back this year will be huge, and to have him under contract for another 4 years alongside the 1 year that was already left on his contract, I'm really excited to see what Darnell Washington's going to do here in the years to come. But let me know what you guys think down there in the comment section. What grade would you give the Darnell Washington extension after seeing Brenton Strange getting $14 million a year here? Give me an A, B, C, D, or F down there in the comment section. And while you guys answer that question, I want to tell you about our friends here at Prize Picks. And guys, I want to show you a Prize Picks projection here for Pittsburgh's Week 1 matchup versus the Atlanta Falcons this year that I absolutely love. I am taking the more on receiving yards for wide receiver DK Metcalf in that game because even though he's going up against a tough corner in A.J. Terrell in that matchup, I think Aaron Rodgers is going to want to feed his number one receiver in the season opener. And because Michael Pittman Jr., Jeremy Bernard, and are being added to this offense in the wide receiver room, and Jonnu Smith won't be on the field, I just think that Metcalf's not going to see as much attention and double teams as he saw last year. So I think he's going to get more than that 49.5 projected receiving yards number there. I'm also taking the more on passing yards for Aaron Rodgers and the less on receiving yards for Kyle Pitts, the newly extended tight end there in Atlanta. And if you guys want to get in on the action here, download the Prize Picks app today. Use code HMA when you play your first $5 lineup to receive $50 in lineups. That's code HMA when you play your first $5 lineup to get an extra $50 in lineups with our friends at Prize Picks. Click the link in the comments and description to download the app today. And a big thank you to Prize Picks for sponsoring today's edition of Steelers Talk. Now, according to the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette's Jahri Dulac, he claims that Pittsburgh's starting lineup for this year is pretty much decided already. Outside of what he says is the left tackle spot, he says we have to wait and see on Broderick Jones, but with the Steelers moving Troy Fautano over to the left side, I'm pretty sure that one is already locked up as well. Now, the first thing I want you guys to keep in mind is that this is Jahri Dulac talking here, and sometimes he can say things with authority that he ends up getting wrong. It's hard to tell sometimes what is actually sourced information that Jahri is saying versus what his opinion is. And, even though he does get some scoops from the team, he's pretty much a mouthpiece for Art Rooney, the team's owner. When he starts getting into like this opinion stuff, he tends to be wrong more often than not. So there's still a possibility that there's certain spots, specifically on the offensive line, that could still be up for grabs, namely the right guard and the right tackle spots along this Steelers offensive line. But if he's right here, that means that Spencer Anderson would be the presumptive starting right guard for this year's team, and Dylan Cook would be the presumptive starting right tackle. Those two took a large majority of the starting reps at those given spots at Steelers OTAs. Now, keep in mind, that doesn't really matter because during OTAs you don't have pads on, so it's hard to really evaluate offensive line play during that period, and really those evaluations happen in training camp when the pads go on. And it's very possible that once we get to the preseason games, when we get to Latrobe and all these different things, that things shift and maybe Jennings Dunker balls out, maybe Max Ahonicher, the first round pick, balls out, and they end up winning those jobs. But if I'm being honest here, guys, I would be fine with Spencer Anderson starting at right guard and Dylan Cook starting at right tackle to start the year. We've seen both of these guys play for the Pittsburgh Steelers at least a replacement starting level. I think Dylan Cook was the best left tackle on the team last year. I think he played better than Broderick Jones last year, and Spencer Anderson has played right guard for this team before. He's also played on the left side quite extensively when there's been injuries. So I would be fine with this to start, but obviously the long-term plan here would be for Max Ahonicher to be the starting right tackle and Jennings Dunker to eventually take over as the starting right guard. But make no mistake here, guys, there is still plenty of positional battles. Even if the Steelers have a pretty good idea of what their starting lineup is going to look like heading into the year, position battles happen all over the roster, not just on the starting lineup, guys. In fact, I think most roster battles really happen on the fringes, and it's more for backup and depth roles as opposed to starting spots. And I think that actually the most interesting competition that we're going to see in Latrobe this year is actually the battle for the backup quarterback spot with Mason Rudolph and Will Howard, because you got Aaron Rodgers, who's locked in as your starting quarterback this year, and Drew Aller as a third-round pick, going to be locked in as probably the QB3 this year. That likely only means one more between Mason Rudolph and Will Howard to make this team. And, there's a bunch of opinions going out there as to who's going to make this team, who's not going to make this team. I'm not even sure if the Pittsburgh Steelers know the answer to that question right now. I think they want to see it play out in camp. They want to see if they can get Will Howard to a point where they feel comfortable with him playing in games this year. And if that becomes the case, I think they will go with the younger option here. But we already know what Mason Rudolph is. He's a high floor, kind of, decent backup quarterback here. So if Will Howard stinks during Latrobe and in the preseason games and he's not up to snuff, they know that they have a very quality QB2 to have on this roster. So, this is a good thing to have, maybe too much quarterback depth here. Somebody's going to be the odd man out, unfortunately, here. But at the end of the day, the Pittsburgh Steelers are going to have somebody that they feel is a really good QB2 option this year. Now, before we transition to our final topic on today's show, make sure you guys click that thumbs up icon to help out our channel today. The real ones know that clicking that thumbs up icon when you watch our videos is the best way to help us out. It takes a half second of your time, and it tells the YouTube algorithm that you're really enjoying our content as a Steelers fan, and that they should recommend our show to other people out there on the platform. So if you guys want to click that thumbs up icon, I would greatly appreciate it. Now let's get into the most controversial story of the day here, where Jahri Dulac, once again in his weekly mailbag newsletter, whatever you guys want to call it, hinted recently that Pittsburgh may be willing to let Joey Porter Jr. walk in free agency if JPJ is not willing to lower his asking price in the future. And remember, Dulac is somebody that is very connected inside the owner's suite here in Pittsburgh. He says, wait until they sign Joey Porter Jr. If they sign him, the Steelers haven't soured on the idea of extending Porter, but I don't think they're prepared to pay him the amount some people think he is worth. So in other words here, guys, there is a price tag that Joey Porter Jr. could ask for where the Pittsburgh Steelers would not sign him to that and would let him walk in free agency next spring. And I know that this is a scenario here that's scary to talk about because Joey Porter Jr. is a really good player. But it sounds like right now it's a possibility that he could be asking for at least $30 million a season. And I just think that it's very unlikely that the Pittsburgh Steelers are going to want to pay that. And I don't think they're really in a position either right now to feel like they have to panic and cave to that demand. We'll talk about the depth that the Steelers have here in just a second. But we can take a look first at, the highest paid cornerbacks in football. And you guys can see there's a pretty decent divide between the number 3 highest paid corner in Derek Stingley Jr. and the 4th highest paid corner in J.C. Horn at $25 million. I think at the end of the day here, Joey Porter Jr. is going to get somewhere in between that. The Steelers would be willing to do that. But if Porter's sitting there and he's firm and he says, I want $30 million on my next contract, and if you're not willing to pay me that, I'm going to go to free agency next year, I don't think it's crazy to say that the Pittsburgh Steelers might actually consider letting him do that. Now, Pittsburgh could theoretically move on from Joey Porter Jr. in 2027. I don't want them to. I'll explain the reasons why here in just a second. But theoretically, right, they could do it, right? You have more draft picks next year. Jamel Dean's under a multiple-year contract, so he could be one of your starters. Apparently, Dalen Everett is somebody that is playing very well for them right now if they wanted to, and maybe Asante Samuel Jr. gets a chance to play and plays well this year. You could sign him. There's still a lot of possibilities here to replace Joey Porter Jr. next offseason if he ends up leaving the team in free agency. And because of that, I don't know if the Steelers necessarily feel hard-pressed to have to pay Joey Porter Jr., Derek Stingley Jr., or Sauce Gardner level of money. But with that said, obviously, Pittsburgh should not want to lose this guy. He is one of the best man-to-man erasers on the perimeter in the National Football League. Is he a perfect player? No. I think he misses some tackles, maybe some more tackles than he should based on how long his arms are. Sometimes the zone coverage feel isn't the best in the National Football League, which maybe prevents him from being like a truly elite corner. He does have some penalties. He's had some penalties quite a bit throughout the course of his career. He cut those out last year, though. So I'm really, really high on Joey Porter Jr. But I think the range that the Steelers are probably going to be more willing to pay him at is between J.C. Horn and Derek Stingley Jr. By the way, this still pays Joey Porter Jr. in the top 5 of cornerbacks in the National Football League. So I think that JPJ, given what he's done in his career to this point, should be willing to take somewhere between $25 and $28 million per season. I think that's more than reasonable. He's still one of the highest paid corners in the entire league if he gets that much. And, I think that that's very appropriate for what he's been so far in his career, what he means to this Pittsburgh Steelers defense. And my guess is, guys, this extension's going to get done. It might go into training camp, and you might even hold in for maybe a week or two before the deal gets done. But I do think that the Pittsburgh Steelers want to keep this player. Obviously, his dad is a Steelers legend, and Joey Porter Jr. is well on his way to, being a very good player for this franchise as well. He already is, right? And maybe he hasn't even hit his full ceiling yet. So I think the Steelers definitely want to keep him around long term. It's just the big question is going to be, is Joey Porter Jr. willing to take less than that $30 million per season mark? If the answer is yes to that question, I think he'll be a Steeler for a very long time. If the answer is no to that, I think there is a chance he could hit the open market next year, depending how he plays this season. But what say you guys? Let me know down there in the comment section. If Joey Porter Jr. demands $30 million per season and won't take a penny less, would you pay him that to keep him on this team long term? Type S if you would sign him to that, or type P if you'd pass on that. For me personally, I would be passing on the $30 million per season number, but let me know what you guys think down there in the comment section. And that'll be it for today's edition and today's slate of Steelers news and rumors. Make sure you guys click that subscribe button if you haven't already, because we're providing you guys the very latest on the black and gold every single day for free on this channel all throughout the summer.